A long time ago, Prince Geletis ruled from Forchtenstein Castle over vast estates in the northeastern foothills of the Alps, which were rich in forests and limestone. In addition, there was extensive agriculture in the plains to the east, which ensured the supply of food, as well as trade routes that were used extensively by merchants. The subjects rarely complained about their lives, as the prince was widely recognized as mild, kind, and peaceful. At Prince Geletus' side was his wife Rosalia, whom he called Sala. Unlike her husband, she was considered hard-hearted, bloodthirsty, vengeful, and cruel, but her husband always showed her her limits and kept her tyrannical desires in check. This union endured, although many said behind closed doors that it was born and existed out of political necessity. Life went on like this for many years, until one day Prince Geletus was called to take part in a military campaign at short notice. The military haste prompted the prince to entrust his wife Rosalia with the duties of ruler for the duration of his absence, although he did so with a bad feeling. But then again, she was ultimately his wife and consort. She would not betray or disappoint him. But that was not to be the case. The day after her husband's departure, Princess Rosalia used her newfound power as autocrat and began to harass and oppress her subjects. Due to the absence of her husband, Lady Rosalia was now unrestrained and treated everyone under her as fair game. A time of terror began in the once tranquil lands on the edge of the Alps. Almost every day, someone from the population had to go to the castle's so-called hunger tower because a harvest tax was not paid on the exact day, or even a penny too little in taxes was paid. Basically, however, it was enough to be unpleasant to be condemned to a merciless and slow death in the dreaded hunger tower. Along the much-used trade routes, Lady Rosalia had the traveling merchants attacked in order to seize their earnings. As a result, these routes were hardly ever used, making it harder for the subjects to sell surpluses and less able to afford the high taxes. The rotting bodies of their victims piled up in the shafts of the hunger tower, and a stench of decay lingered over Forchtenstein Castle. When Prince Geletus returned after years of campaigning, the lamentations of the oppressed and tormented population were already ringing out at the borders of his realm. No one dared to speak the name of the tormentor, but the prince's expression grew darker and darker as he realized who was responsible. All he could do was to vow to avenge this injustice appropriately. When he arrived at his castle, he was greeted by Lady Rosalia with apparent joy. She immediately showed her husband the treasures she had amassed, but did not tell him the truth about their origins. There was no need to do so, as the prince already knew the facts from the accounts of the maltreated population. He let his wife believe that he was happy about the new wealth. He didn't even ask about the stench that lingered in the air like a veil. In honor of his return, Prince Geletus organized a large feast attended by numerous guests. During a speech, he told them that during the campaign, he had met a bitterly evil woman in a distant land who only wanted to oppress and torment her subjects. He listed all the atrocities committed by this tyrant. The crowd listened and seemed to realize what their prince was trying to achieve. Rosalia, who was also present, was horrified to hear her own misdeeds, but didn't let on until the prince addressed her directly and asked how his wife would punish such a murderous woman. Despite knowing the fate that awaited her, she replied immediately, and without batting an eyelid that such a horrible person should meet her end in the Hunger Tower. Prince Giletus stood up at the head of the banqueting table, looked down at his wife, and exclaimed, "Sala, you have pronounced your own judgment." The lady of the castle was then arrested by the prince's bodyguard and tied to a rope, which in turn was attached to a crossbeam. This crossbeam was located deep in the Hunger Tower in a shaft in which the rotting bodies of the victims of her cruelty were piled up beneath her. It was there that she would slowly meet her deserved fate. Every quarter of an hour, a guard approached an opening in the tower at the prince's behest and called out, "Sala! Hey! Sala! Hey!" down into the tower. Screams and whimpers were always the answer until the 7th day. For when the guard called down into the tower again on the 7th day, it could only hear the echo of its own call. After that day, the ghostly, glowing spirit of the cruel lady of the castle, Rosalia, appeared for a long time at midnight, haunting the Hunger Tower. The muffled cry of "Sala! Hey!" could be heard echoing from the tower. Many years later, the prince had a chapel built on the highest point of the hillside where Forchtenstein Castle was built to redeem Rosalia's soul. This chapel was called the Rosalia Chapel, and the elevation on which it was built was henceforth known as the Rosalia Mountain. This is how the spirit of the cruel castle lady Rosalia found eternal rest. The Rosalia Chapel and Forchtenstein Castle still stand today and have become landmarks of the region.